So YouTube has been, there have been problems on YouTube. I don't necessarily know exactly what these problems are. That's why we're going to be watching this and kind of looking into why it is as shitty as it is. I haven't seen it yet. I was waiting for YouTube to announce something, but it seems like they're not announcing anything.
Earlier this week, YouTube slyly pushed out a new policy change that has had a wildly large effect on tons of channels in terms of demonetizing their content, and as well as just generally making it very difficult for some creators to continue to produce what they have been. They still haven't said anything about this, to my knowledge.
See, that's what I was waiting for, is like, I was kind of like, whenever this first happened, I was like, oh, well, let's wait to see if YouTube makes a post about this, but they haven't.
Not publicly or clearly. They're remaining silent on it, treating it like it's the Coca-Cola secret formula here. They're,
with cocaine,
for some reason, very apprehensive to tell people about this, so I've become the unofficial messenger of letting people know what's going on.
Okay.
I made a video on this 4 days ago, and I don't want to just repeat myself here, but they released this policy change, and it's all in plain English, but it might as well be hieroglyphics because it leaves so much room for interpretation, and the way that it's currently being enforced seems completely random. But I'm going to go ahead and give you, like, the general breakdown of what I've talked about, and also what I've now learned. So, they've changed their rules around profanity, making it a lot more strict, in my opinion, where pretty much all profanity is treated equally, whereas before...
I don't understand why profanity's bad. Why is fuck a worse word than potato? I don't understand it. I've never understood it. It doesn't make sense to me. It's just stupid.
Or things like fuck were considered
True.
a different tier,
It's a good point.
which could lead to demonetization.
Yeah.
Now, if you even say ass or, you know, dirty butt, you know, there's a chance you might get demonetized for that kind of foul potty mouth if it's said within the first 8 to 15 seconds of a video. That's the safe space, like a treaty with YouTube, where if you violate it and you say anything that's not part of just standard Queen's English, you're going to get demonetized, no questions asked, and you can't really argue otherwise. It's not going to get changed.
That's always been the unspoken rule.
If you've got the mouth of a sailor and you happen to say too many naughty words throughout a video, you can also get demonetized for that.
Yep.
But it's very unclear exactly what the limit is. You know, what's...
Well, it's enforced arbitrarily. Some people, it gets enforced on them immediately. Some people go through it and it's not an issue at all. Who is this policy for? And that's what I always wonder about. Yeah, like who's being helped by this?
Too many naughty words. How many fucks are we allowed, you know? No one really knows yet, but it seems all over the place. And keep in mind, since now there's no longer like a tier list of swear words where, you know, fuck is S tier and we're afraid of that at YouTube, they're all in the same tier except for a couple exceptions like hell and damn. Now there's a chance that if you go on a shitting spree where you're just, you know, mentioning shit, you get real heated in a game. You're like, man, you're such a pile of shit, the worst gamer of all time.
Fuck this cock-ass dick
sucker. If you say
Yeah.
that too many times, I believe it now carries a risk of demonetization since it's viewed in the same light as saying fuck a lot. That's all still very muddy, but they are clearly cracking down harder on profanity in general. And now I want to talk about something that I didn't even know existed.
And this is, I cannot get it past my mind. Who is this for? Who wants this? And it's like you could say advertisers want it, right? But why do advertisers want it? Who tells the advertisers to want it? It doesn't make sense.
When I made the last video that a lot of people have been talking about, and it's not 100% confirmed, so take it with a grain of salt, but there's something called auto-generated captions on YouTube, which I'm sure you've seen and used before.
Unfortunately.
And they can occasionally have a conniption. Like, it'll get the words wrong when they try and transcribe them, and it just looks like a fucking game of Mad Libs. Like, it's completely all over the place from time to time, very off the mark, sometimes just genuinely gibberish. Like someone waking up after a deep slumber and fumbling all of their words around. But
It's
as
like
far
me on
back
my
as
whole stream.
2018, these auto-generated captions can have an effect on the monetization status of a video.
Oh, I guess that makes sense. Yeah, so if it auto-generates a word that's a bad boy word, then it would automatically demonetize. Oh, that makes sense. Yeah.
So if the auto-generated
I could see
captions
that.
misunderstand a word, like in this example, they
And this is
thought one of the words was
2018, by the way.
porn,
This is a long time
it can
ago.
lead to a demonetization, allegedly. Again, this is all speculative, but since this new policy has been rolling out in such huge force with tons of channels being hit and this massive wave of demonetization, some family-friendly channels are getting caught here, and they're all very confused because they don't use profanity,
Yeah.
they don't play violent video games, and yet they're still getting demonetized, and they've been wondering why. So they turned back to potentially the auto-generated captions getting words wrong, and in a couple of cases it seems like that seems to have been the culprit. So
Yeah,
again,
exactly.
not 100% confirmed, and that
That
may
would
be
make
just
sense.
like a fluke and happens occasionally, but it is worth mentioning because I think it's statistically significant in light of how
Well,
strict
it makes logical sense that they have like a chat parsing tool that after the auto-generated captions go on, then it sends it through the chat parsing tool, and if the chat parsing tool detects certain words, the video gets demonetized. Like this, just it makes sense. You can do this all automated.
YouTube now seems to want to be on
Sure.
profanity. But the big one that I'm going to be focusing on today that I've learned a lot about recently is the violent content policy
Ooh.
changes. I did mention it in the last one, but I've learned a lot more about it
Okay,
now.
let's
I'm
see
going
it.
to talk about the violent gaming content policy changes in a moment since I already touched on those and I've only learned a little bit more about it. But where I learned a lot more is just general violent content, no matter what the genre. Animation, hand-drawn, cartoon, anything. Like even just still images. So, in the last video, I mentioned that one of my most recent uploads got demonetized with this new wave
Uh-huh.
out of nowhere when there's no profanity until like the very end of the video, and the only thing that pops up before then is our trailer for God Slap 2, which is an animation,
Okay.
and there is violence towards the end of that trailer. It's about
Ooh.
15 seconds worth of like blood and gore. But that comes at a minute 45 into the video, which is way outside
Weenie
of their
Hut Jr..
15 to 30 second grace period where they don't want anything violent. And it got demonetized. So I speculated it got demonetized because that content was deemed too violent. Even though I don't think it was anything disturbing or shocking over the top violence, I speculated that that must have been the case since profanity wasn't an issue. Violence also.
And I think this is also an issue is that like YouTube is intentionally opaque in how they explain what gets you and doesn't get you demonetized or suspended or anything. And I think they do this intentionally to make it to where nobody can actually really create an inconsistency with YouTube because YouTube never says anything. So how can you ever take anything YouTube says and use it against them whenever they never say anything in the first place? Problem solved.
Also wasn't an issue in the early parts of the video or anything. It's just 15 seconds that does have some blood and guts. I asked YouTube directly, and my representative told me that I was probably right. Most likely what caused that demonetization is it was flagged for being too violent to be monetized because of that one 15-second scene. Now, of course, I may be biased, but I really don't think that
Let's see
this
it.
is too shockingly gory and gross where people are going to be fucking puking after seeing it. But it did show me that not only are they cracking down on like violent gaming content, they're cracking down on violent content in any medium, even just
Seems fine to
animated.
me.
And I really just still don't think that this is that violent to begin with.
No, it's not that
At
bad.
least not enough to warrant a demonetization because again, this wasn't demonetized until this new policy rolled out. Not just
I mean, it's a cartoon. It's not even real. Who cares?
video games, it's not just animated content, it's not just
Nobody
real-life
actually
content
died.
where someone's like in a fight or something like that, or someone gets like a tooth knocked out. It's also just still images of just drawn images, like just a fucking picture, like a cartoon picture, not even an animated one, not even a picture that moves. I learned this by watching Comics Explained new video where he reviews our God Slap comic book. I don't know if it's just this policy hates God Slap or if this really does extend to just any kind of medium at all, including just still images, but regardless. Comics Explained posted this video reviewing issue 1 of God Slap. It was a very, very sweet review, and I really appreciated it. The whole team found it to be super, super nice, and I'm really happy to hear that he liked it so much.
That's nice. I haven't
However,
heard of that before.
he got demonetized for even posting some of the frames. Now, there is violence and gore in the comic, of course, but once again, it's just comic book pages. I don't think it's anything.
I think that really, you know, I've said this many times, is that whenever you side with unreasonable people, or you concede ground to unreasonable people, you become unreasonable yourself. And I think that this is completely unreasonable. Why is society, you know, tiptoeing around these problems of like profanity and gore in video games whenever 95% of people don't care about this at all? Nobody gives a fuck. Like, why are we listening to people that are fucking stupid and annoying? Who cares? Why does it matter what they think?
Thing that's like egregious.
Yeah, Karens. Yeah, what the fuck is this?
That I feel warrants demonetization. It's kind of ridiculous just how strict this violent content policy is. There's no profanity in the first 30 seconds or anything. Everything from this video plays by YouTube's ad guideline rules, except for the vagueness of their violent content policy change. So just even showing some panels that have violence got him demonetized.
That is crazy.
It is extremely strict.
Wow.
They're coming down very, very hard on anything that's not YouTube kids oriented, it feels like. Violent gaming content now can get age restricted and demonetized far more frequently than we've ever seen before. I've been on this platform since 2006, on this channel since 2007. I have never seen such strict enforcement of violent gaming videos. I swear to God, if you're playing...
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Like, again, it's just fucking stupid. Anybody who gets upset about violent gaming videos, just, like, grow the fuck up. It's not even real. Like, why are we even thinking about this? Like, this is insane. Like, there's actual problems, like homeless people. There's, like, wars happening. There's, like, fucking rampant fucking political corruption. And is violent fucking video game... Who the fuck cares about... Who devotes their own mental energy to this? It's insane.
A game where you're not giving kisses to the enemy to defeat them, you're probably going to get demonetized for it.
Yeah, there you go.
I've had a ton more videos on games
then you get demonetized for sexual
recently than I would have ever expected. Of course, I'm exaggerating a bit. I'm not trying to put the fear of God in anyone. I'm not trying to say that if you play Roblox Shadow Company and you get too many kills too quickly, the video's going to get demonetized for fucking violent terrorism because you piled up too many bodies too quickly. I'm just saying that they're cracking down on violent gaming content, and a lot of videos I've made on just normal shooters that weren't demonetized before are demonetized now. When it's not anything that's like shocking or disturbing or anything like that, it's just normal.
And this is why it's important for content creators to try to procure their own ads. This is why it's good whenever, you know, somebody like the Giguk video that we just got done watching, you know, he's got his own ad inside of the video. Because those people make a direct judgment on his content and decide whether it's good or not. And it doesn't matter what YouTube is okay with or not okay with, or like what their monetization is, what the advertisers care about, because they don't matter. It's just between the content creator, the advertisement that the content creator has chosen, and the audience. And those are the three people that matter. This fucking conglomerate of pussies that somehow think this is a problem are totally irrelevant. And the more that becomes the case, the better content creation will be.
Games. And if we turn our attention to the policy itself when it comes to gaming, it becomes even more confusing because in this policy here on what can earn ad revenue under gaming, it says graphic scenes like gory attacks outside the first 15 seconds of the video or violence that's unrealistic, all of that. Like, this is the old policy. Like, that sounds normal. The only difference is now it seems like they just don't want the video to start with violent gaming content. Like, they don't want the video to open and all of a sudden it's the scene out of Outlast where you're getting your dick cut off or anything. Which is...
Does that happen? I haven't played that. Yeah. I should play that. That's funny.
That's fine. That's not like the biggest change in the world that's going to like ruin entire creators' channels or anything. It's pretty easy just to make sure that for 15 seconds you don't have like wild blood and gore splattering all over the screen. And also keeping violent thumbnails out of it is another thing that they clearly don't want. All of that's totally normal and totally easy to play
I think
around.
Violent thumbnails is reasonable for like people that don't want to see that. I mean, if you're playing a video and you've clicked on that video and the content of that video is not to your liking, maybe you shouldn't have clicked on that video. But a thumbnail I find is reasonable.
But then I started scratching my head because when you go into the limited or no ad revenue section and go to gaming, again, the first thing makes sense, don't want any gory shit or anything violent in the thumbnail or in the beginning. That they've made that clear. But underneath that, graphic game violence includes brutal killings or severe injuries focusing on bodily fluids and parts such as beheading and dismemberment.
Oh, good.
I get the bodily fluids. They don't want pee, poop, vomit, cum squirting all over the place. Okay, I get that.
Yeah.
But dismemberment and, severe graphic killing,
Gears of War is
what
banned.
exactly does that mean? Like, I don't think in any of the gaming videos that most creators make, the focus is on the dismemberment and gore and,
No.
doing snow angels and intestines and blood on the floor. However,
Probably
it seems
not.
like those videos are getting hit regardless just because there is that component to the games sometimes. And dismemberment in games has been commonplace for fucking 20 years now.
Well, Unreal Tournament, like fucking Doom, like you used to have this. This is always how it was.
Team Fortress 2, when you die, you can get like insta-gibbed, you have body parts and you explode into blood and stuff. Like, does that now count as being too severe? Because there is dismemberment there. I mean, shit, even in Roblox, when I was playing those Squid games with the boogeyman Jim Wool, in a couple of the games, if you fail, your like arms and head pop off.
Yeah, it's
Like,
not good.
It's what is the line? This vagueness and this reluctance to communicate leads to this situation where the community can only speculate on what exactly is and is not allowed, because even though YouTube writes out their definitions of what is and is not advertiser friendly.
Yeah, they're applied and not applied selectively, so then you just have to kind of base off of that, and there's no clarification of why that application happened, so nobody really knows, and everybody is like always wondering, like, is this what's going to happen or not?
The enforcement paints a very different picture. It's very hard to play by their rules when we don't have a clear understanding of what they are or how they apply to the platform. It is so fucking frustrating that I continue to have to get splintered information from a ton of creators, as well as my own research, as well as my own YouTube contact, who also doesn't have all of the information at hand because internally YouTube doesn't allow him access to all the information.
Oh my god, why? What is this? I don't know why some of these websites are run like this. It just sounds so fucking insane.
At hand. So it's so fucking frustrating and so goddamn difficult.
Oh
but
my
it
god.
really seems like they're cracking down on a lot of things that make no sense at all. I just wanted to give
it's not that they make no sense, it's that they are not in line with the audience's values. Like, people don't give a shit in general about profanity. Just because there's a few fucking soccer mom Karens out there that get angry about this doesn't mean it's a normal, prevailing opinion on the website. Nobody gives a fuck.
little follow-up here with more information I learned to keep everyone as knowledgeable on the policy changes as possible, so that way you can navigate what's best for your careers, your channels going forward.
It's good to know this.
Yeah, that's really about it. So yeah.
Yeah, that's so weird to me, man.
And
I really think so.
Earlier this
Give me
week,
a second.
YouTube...
Karens and boomers can sue, though? What are they going to sue them for? For having profanity on the website? If that's against the law, then they should change the fucking law. It's so ridiculous that this is even being given any consideration at all. Like, why is anybody even thinking about this? Yeah, it shouldn't even be considered. You can sue for anything in the U.S.? Yeah, sure. But, like, all I'm saying is that this whole problem is ridiculous to me. I think it's so dumb. I've never understood it. My dad said the exact same thing. He never gave a fuck what I said. My mom didn't really care either, except for if I ever said Jesus, she'd say, leave Jesus out of this. And it's like, how could I leave Jesus out of this? If Jesus is God and God's everything, isn't it his fault that I just lost in this video game? So, like, I think he is responsible for me getting killed in Mario. So... like, by your own logic, like, Jesus is involved with this, but she wasn't fucking buying that, and she never took that as an excuse. But, yeah, like, growing up, I always thought this was stupid. I never watch my language around people. If somebody is getting upset that I'm using certain types of words, I just stop talking to them, and that's it. There's no reason for me to do that. Why would I care? Yeah, maybe I'm an asshole, but there it is. Yeah, can't have it all. Yeah. She wasn't okay with the Jesus thing. Safety shit's the light, man. It's frustrating to see what we're constantly dealing with YouTube. Yeah, the fact that YouTube didn't need to do this is crazy. Maybe they did. Maybe they felt like they did to make more money. Who knows? Thank you for covering this. YouTube doesn't listen unless a big creator holds them accountable. Find it really hypocritical. YouTube's making the rules so strict, but ads can be submitted by anyone, are practically unregulated and actively forced on you by the algorithm even after they're reported. Yeah, that's because YouTube gets paid by ads. That's why, and YouTube has to pay to host videos. Makes sense. Yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens, man. Even around kids, yeah, I don't give a fuck. It's stupid. Like, yeah, why would I care? This is a ridiculous, antiquated idea that doesn't even make any sense. That certain words are bad, like, why are they bad? There's no reason. It's not like there's like a historical fucking context behind them, like different racist words. These are just profane words. Why? Because somebody at a church said this 500 years ago? Like, why are we still taking this seriously? It's stupid. I expect logic from people who consider words violence. It's going to get worse. Usually those are two different groups of people, to be fair. Yeah, I don't know. But why male models? yeah, there you go. Anyway, so if I nude yoga on YouTube, but saying fuck is bad. Well, I mean, to be fair, I don't know if the nude yoga is monetized, but in general, that's kind of the way that I feel about it. There's a video called The Lawsuit That Could Destroy YouTube that covers why YouTube is doing this. Let me see this real quick. Okay, yeah, I am going to watch this.
Happy New Year, everybody. For my first video of 2023, I thought we'd talk about impending doom. Well, okay that's good. Still to be decided. But at the end of next month, February 21st, 2023, the United States Supreme Court is hearing arguments for a case called Gonzalez versus Google, which has major implications, not just for YouTube, actually, but for the entire internet. It's serious enough that, like, I'm low on the YouTube totem pole. I don't get invited to too many things these days, but I was even invited to a group call with YouTube employees, other creators, creator-adjacent business people to inform us of what this is and ask if we wanted to be part of something called an amicus brief, which will actually be used.
That sounds kind of concerning if YouTube invites you to talk about a lawsuit that they're going to be undergoing. I think that's very not reassuring.
During arguments in the trial. So what is this case, Gonzalez versus Google, about, and why is it a big deal? I do want to give a disclaimer. I have no formal legal background. I'm sure that'll be obvious to people. So there probably will be better videos on this from other YouTubers who are actually lawyers. Keep that in mind. I'll still do my best to give the info necessary for
Sounds
this.
good.
So before we
it.
get into specifics of this case, we need to go back to something called Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act of 1996. This is where they're not
liable for things.
This is where everyone tunes out. They're like, oh, God, sections and numbers, and I didn't come here for this.
The government shit, dude?
Yeah, I know. But bear with me, because it is important. And like I said, the future of YouTube, at least in the form that we know it, does sort of hang in the balance here. So, what is Section 230? Well, perhaps the most important text in it says, no provider or user of an interactive computer service shall be treated as the publisher or speaker of any information provided by another
That's why they don't get sued for
information
DMCA.
content provider. What does that mean, simplified? Basically, it means that a website like YouTube or Facebook or Twitter or any site that hosts a ton of user-generated content isn't responsible as a website for the speech, the posts that the users post on the site. You can't blame YouTube because someone posts a terrible, awful video where they say horrible things.
Yes.
And this is very important because
it's like it's safe harbor for like DMCA as well. It's effectively liability. It removes their liability because all they do is allow a platform for these things to exist on, and they do not pick and choose what can and cannot exist. It makes perfect sense.
Contrast to, let's call them legacy media outlets. So think newspapers, TV news outlets. Those are considered publishers in that they are seen as expressly authorizing what is put forth, whether it's in the text in the articles or verbally said on the TV station. So let's think of something like slander or libel. Say a newspaper publishes an article that accuses someone out there of doing terrible things.
Imagine that.
But those terrible things aren't actually true.
Wow, imagine that.
Sue for libel, and the newspaper is responsible for having published that article. The difference here, which is protected by Section 230, is if someone goes on YouTube and says a bunch of slanderous things about someone, it's not YouTube's fault. You can sue the person who made that video, but you can't sue YouTube for hosting that piece of content. It's a very similar concept to the DMCA, which I think more people here are probably familiar with, in that what the DMCA is to copyrighted content, Section 230 is to speech. There is an important carve-out here that is different from the DMCA, though.
I've never understood how Section 230 applies to any social media website, because all of the social media websites do not vet the content before it's published, but they do have different types of vetting processes like monetization. So how can you not use monetization and monetizing content as effectively publishing of that content? It doesn't, I don't see how these two things fit together. But the truth is that how could a website function without Section 230?
And that states that no provider or user of an interactive computer service shall be held liable on account of any voluntary action taken in good faith to restrict access to or availability of material that the provider or users consider to be obscene, lewd, lascivious, filthy, excessively violent, harassing, or otherwise objectionable, whether or not such material is constitutionally protected. Okay, this just means that sites are allowed to actually try to execute good faith moderation on the content that's posted to them. And as opposed to the DMCA, where if YouTube tries to be hands-on at all and says, oh, you can't post this on our site, they're no longer indemnified. They have to be totally hands-off.
And this is kind of what the problem is that obviously, like, you're talking about obscene, like, this is like, I don't know, like ISIS executions, lewd, this is like OnlyFans promo, like all this kind of stuff. But the issue is otherwise objectionable. How do you define what is otherwise objectionable? Are these opinions that are disagreeable politically? Like, can somebody get banned for having a certain political opinion or disagreeing with some ideology, etc.? And I think that's really where things get complicated.
With Section 230, YouTube can make efforts to moderate really, really bad content via the community guidelines without still being held as a publisher or not being protected by Section 230 any longer. So, in summary, Section 230 means people post vile things to YouTube. YouTube can try to moderate it, but at the end of the day, it's not YouTube's fault. So now we can get into Gonzalez versus Google. And despite the fact that YouTube and the internet's future hangs in the balance, it is an interesting question to ponder, and at the center of it is the algorithm, which we love to talk about here, right? The specific instance that actually brought about this case, ironically, I don't think I can even mention by name, because this video will probably end up being suppressed, which means that the content moderation systems are probably working, I guess. So I have to kind of speak about it cryptically. So what's alleged here is that the YouTube algorithm served up radical, if you say yes, yes in Spanish and then reverse the words, radical that videos, which ended up contributing to the radicalization of viewers and then potentially led to them doing very bad things. And so the case asks whether Section 230 still...
Well, I already said it before, right? As I said, ISIS execution. Yeah, so basically it's that it was promoting ISIS videos.
Protects websites
yeah, it was.
When the algorithm is recommending content to viewers. So even though it's a very specific instance that brought about the case in the first place, it has wide-reaching implications, which is usually the case for things that get heard by the Supreme Court. Usually they are constitutional issues, and this is, in a way, a free speech issue. So will the court consider that a website, that YouTube recommending a piece of content to a viewer is an endorsement, is like a newspaper giving the okay to publish an article?
YouTube recommending a video to a user, is this an endorsement? I would say yes. I think that undeniably, like, there's no way that it's not.
Or will they see that almost all social media websites at this point, if not all of them, operate off of an algorithmic recommendation system, and to not give some sort of carve-out there would more or less break the operations
exactly.
of
That's what the
all
problem
these
is.
websites. The scope of this is not even known, though. Like, where do you draw the line between what is considered algorithm and what is not? You might make the argument that videos recommended from channels you're not subscribed to on your homepage, maybe that's algorithm.
Yes,
Suggested
it's
videos
true.
to the side and bottom of the video you're watching, okay, maybe that's algorithm. But what about search results? If you're searching for something, you have to rank the content that shows up somehow.
That's true.
Is that also considered algorithm at that point?
It's
and I
very good
actually
point.
asked this in the call that I mentioned earlier, and I was told that there is precedent for Google search results to be protected. But again, even though this case is called Gonzalez versus Google, it is about YouTube. And so I'm sure...
I know Google suppresses like autocomplete and search results. Like, everybody knows this. It's not like this is a secret.
That the defense will reference that, but I don't know that it's established precedent when it comes to YouTube search specifically. And so it's a very hard question to answer. What actually is the algorithm? This only applies, obviously, if the Supreme Court is thinking about ruling against Google here. But I guess that's why you're probably still here, is to find out what could actually happen if the court rules against Google on all counts. So, God forbid, let's envision a worst-case scenario here.
I don't know.
We may not actually see immediate massive changes to YouTube. Because remember,
no, it's probably not. I mean, like, any of these changes, like, they're like, okay, you have to fix this in 5 years or like 10 years or something.
This ruling wouldn't be, oh, the algorithm is now illegal, you can't make content recommendations. It would be that by making these content recommendations to viewers, you may now be held liable for what they've uploaded. So now if somebody goes and uploads a horrible, vile video that's a clear violation of the terms of service they agreed to when they made a Google account to be able to upload in the first place, but somebody sees it via an algorithmic means before it's taken down,
Google
and that
could be
person
liable
decides,
for it.
I'm going to sue YouTube for this.
Yes.
And even if it's a frivolous lawsuit because it was a violation of the terms of service to begin with, YouTube has to defend that lawsuit. And defending lawsuits is very expensive.
Yes.
And if they start getting hit with enough of those, then it's going to be too expensive to keep the site operating in the way that it is. And at that point, they may be forced to start scaling back in places in order to avoid being hit by all of these lawsuits over and over, to the extent that the site can actually operate without being in jeopardy from them. So over time, if YouTube is hit with a deluge of these incoming lawsuits, does that mean that the only functions remaining are the ability to manually browse to a specific channel? That subscription feeds
that could be
are the only
case.
thing that's active? Channels you've already hit the subscription button on, and therefore it's going to serve you content from them?
It'd be nuts.
Does search still work in the same way? Will that be carved out? Will it be exempt? But when you really think about it at the end of the day, as much as, I've complained about the algorithm here and there, usually that comes from like a selfish perspective, like, man, I wish it were recommending my content more.
Right. That's whenever people don't like the algorithm.
What does YouTube actually look like? What do all of these websites look like without...
I think it looks a lot like Facebook. I think the best example of something that's not done algorithmically is Facebook, or at least like back whenever a lot of us probably used it, like maybe 5 or 10 years ago, is whenever you would go to Facebook and all the posts that you would see would be people that you were friends with. Like, you wouldn't see a bunch of random people getting advertised to you, for example. Does that make sense? Yeah, I think Facebook is much more or less algorithmically driven than, like, let's say YouTube or TikTok.
Any form of algorithmic content recommendation.
Not anymore. No
they don't
idea
look
about
the
now.
same.
Never go there.
Every social media platform these days operates to some scope on algorithmic recommendations.
Yes, they do.
How do you find the people you're going to subscribe to in the first place without being recommended their content in some place?
Yeah, how do you
Search
find
results,
somebody?
sure, but if I look in my YouTube analytics, over the course of my YouTube history, the majority of people who are here watching this
get a lot of browse
discovered
viewers.
my content algorithmically. And without that, it's just going to crush potential for future growth for channels.
Yes.
And you have people who've obviously invested their livelihoods in building up a channel. You have people who recently got to the point where they...
I think it's more, like, harmful for people that already don't have a following. Because, like, a lot of the people that already have a following, people know to search for them. But how do you find the new people after that? It's like pulling up the ladder.
that's not viable anymore. They can't grow.
Yeah.
There's no more algorithm to push their content and expose them to new viewers. I might be okay because I've been at it for so many years.
Exactly, yeah.
I've been able to build up an existing audience that may still be able to find my videos through subscriptions, but it would still hurt dramatically. Still, at least half the people who watch every video of mine are not subscribed. They're finding that content somehow. Some may be searching for me directly, but I would bet a huge majority are being found in suggested videos, recommendations on the home page. And without that, viewership plummets. If people have to go out of their way to try to discover new content, it's going to dramatically decrease the amount of interaction that content's going to see. So in the long term, you see massive loss of jobs. There are creators out there who may get tons and tons of views, but they also employ a ton of people. They have a lot of overhead. And all of a sudden, if you decrease that viewership even by 10, 20%.
Well, they're gonna have to fire people and scale back. I think that's just what happens with anything. Yeah.
Not able to meet their payroll. And the thing is, if YouTube falls, that's the final domino, right? They are the biggest, most well-capitalized entity to be able to try to defend against this and keep the site running without changes for the longest in the event that this case is ruled against them.
Yeah, I mean, Google's like the biggest online company, minus like maybe Amazon or something like that. I don't even know which one's bigger, but they're both huge. Like, yeah, if Google can't defend this, Twitter certainly can't. TikTok won't be able to. Instagram, I guess Instagram is Facebook. Yeah.
Every other site at that point, smaller websites that are dependent on algorithmic recommendations, they're done. They're gone. They're not operating anymore. It's impossible. And so it's not just creators who get destroyed. There's also going to be employee job loss at tech, social media companies across the board. And so while I'm not a constitutional scholar who can really determine how Section 230 applies to algorithmic recommendations, what I focused on in my contribution to the amicus brief was simply that these algorithmic recommendations, despite maybe having an occasional shortfall, have contributed tremendously to job growth and people being able to make a living. And
the algorithm is absolutely positive for people. It helps people out. That's why every one of these websites has an algorithm. They wouldn't all have an algorithm if it was not beneficial. And whenever content creators grow, the platform grows. So it would make sense that things that grow the platform, that grow content creators also would grow the platform, which would mean that anything that YouTube does to grow content creators is also done effectively to grow the platform.
Are necessary for these sites to be able to operate the way they do and are, I think, a net positive. Despite, again, everything that I've complained about in the past, I do believe that content recommendation systems are a net positive to websites and helping to allow creators.
I would say they're a net positive as well.
Again, though, I do just want to remind that is an absolute worst case scenario.
Yes.
And in my 12, almost 13 years now on YouTube, I feel like we've seen enough legislative scares, SOPA, PIPA, the end of net neutrality that have come and passed and not ended up being nearly the...
Yeah, every time, like, happens like every couple of years where, like, somebody's like, oh, this thing's going to happen and the internet's going to be over, and then it's not over, so yeah. He's right about that.
They were promised to be. So I also have hope that that will end up being the case here, but it's also good not to get complacent and be aware of things like this. And even though in this case there isn't quite as direct a way to participate, you can always call up your local representative and voice your concerns in the matter in the hope that maybe at some point there can be legislation that is actually passed in order to enforce that algorithmic content recommendations are concretely protected by Section 230. Despite what
I think that they should be protected, but I also think that parts of what algorithmically is shown and not shown should not be protected. So, like, for example, curating the results to not show things that are disagreeable because of some sort of, political viewpoint or social worldview, I do not think is acceptable. I don't think this is beneficial for anybody. Now, I think that obviously it makes sense to not show gore and stuff like that. Everybody can agree with. But whenever you're not showing things that are, disagreeable from your company's position, like, for example, like, how that chat bot wouldn't have, it would not It would not allow itself to make arguments for fossil fuels because fossil fuels were bad. That's the kind of stuff that I mean. That's the bad stuff that I think is absolutely should not be protected.
End up turning out from this case. If there are elements that are ruled against Google, there could always be legislation in the future that is passed in order to protect this sort of thing. So it's good to be aware of. I haven't seen too much coverage on this, interestingly enough, yet it was the first time that I was asked if I wanted to get on a call.
Yeah, that sounds like
YouTube
it's very
employees
important.
And other creators to discuss it, which I did find interesting. Maybe as the trial gets closer, we'll start hearing more about it, but I still thought it was worth making the video, putting it out there, putting it on your radar in case it's of interest, and we'll just have to wait to see how it plays out.
I think this is a pretty good summary.
Algorithmic content recommendations will be able to remain, as much as I've complained. Again,
it's better to have it than not.
So with that said, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.
That was a good video. Absolutely. Definitely a good video. Let me go ahead and I'll link you guys the video real quick. Shit, give me 1 second. There we go. All right, we're good. Yeah, there's the video right there. Captain Sparkles. I actually don't even know. I think, did he do Minecraft or something? I don't remember it exactly. But I think this is really well put together. This should fuel the return of true organic content. You understand how organic content is usually is generated organically is through an algorithm. That's why I would worry about, OG Minecraft YouTuber. That's what I thought. Well, anyway, yeah, I think this is pretty fucking bad. And obviously, I think that there should be some protections that these companies need. Like, you need something like Section 230, or social media simply could not exist. You can't have YouTube getting sued, 20,000 times a day because 20,000 things that are getting, like, think about how many things that get uploaded to YouTube every single day that are illegal. Like, social media would simply not function and not be able to function or exist in any capacity like it does now if you didn't have Section 230. So, I do think that an algorithm is a good thing, but I do think that the way that algorithms are suppressed and different search results are suppressed should be something that the government does have oversight over. I don't think this is like, social media platforms are so powerful, they are so influential, and they are so important. That's why every single world leader has social media. That's why every single government authority has social media. It's because it matters, it works, it's efficient, it's useful, and it is massively fucking influential, regardless of whether you like it or not. So if that is the case, how is it okay that social media is able to just suppress and remove different political viewpoints because they are deemed disagreeable by the people that work there? This is a very bad thing. It's an incredibly bad thing, and I think that, truthfully, it would be better if there was at least some sort of oversight over what they can and can't suppress. That's what I think. The FBI stopped the Hunter Biden laptop story from Twitter. I didn't read that part of the Twitter files. Yeah, I didn't read that part. My understanding was that the Hunter Biden laptop story was suppressed because Twitter people thought it was 100% happened, is real. Okay, yeah, I didn't read that part of it. You should read them. Yeah, I haven't finished all of them yet. It's pretty bad. Yeah, Zuckerberg already said that. I didn't watch it. They definitely did for Facebook, per Mark Zuckerberg. Just because technology is being abused doesn't mean that we should burn it. No, I agree with that. I think that the algorithm is a good thing, and it's very useful, but it doesn't mean that everything in the algorithm is useful and anything like that. That's the point that I'm making. You see what I mean? FBI plays Twitter to censor things? Yeah, well, I mean, there needs to be more, and this is why there needs to be oversight over it, because, like, these things happen under the table because there's no rules for them. You see what I'm saying? So, like, of course this happens. Of course there's this kind of stupid shit happening. Absolutely, that's the issue with YouTube in these places. What if they're hiding or promoting content that's not illegal, effectively making them publisher and not just a host? Yeah. You trust the government with the power? More than YouTube, yes. I don't trust the government either, but I trust the government more than YouTube. Yeah, it doesn't... We don't want big government. I always find it to be funny whenever I say this and then people say they don't want big government while they're typing on a keyboard that has regulations, using a computer that's regulated, with their internet that's also regulated by the government, using a monitor that has a regulated amount of wattage, and then also accessing websites that already have regulation to begin with. So this is such a silly fucking thing to say that, oh, regulation is bad whenever every single thing that you're dealing with is regulated like fucking crazy. It's just so silly. Yeah, typing with their smartphone. Oh, I'm glad this isn't regulated. Yes, it is. It's regulated in 1,000 different ways. All I'm saying is that these companies, it is not good for the population for these companies to have immunity from any criticism or accountability for just suppressing certain opinions because they disagree with them. That's all I'm saying. Living in a house with building codes, driving a car that's been crash tested by the government, driving on a road that's maintained by taxes. Yeah, but guys, hey, listen, we don't want big government. Hey, yo, this is too far. Jesus, that makes me so fucking annoyed, man. God damn. I don't disagree with anything. It's just virtue signaling. I think people just want to see... I don't know what it is, honestly. That's a good question. I don't know. Why not medium government? I think that's what we have now. We have medium-sized government. Let's see here. Twitter shit was not suppressed by the FBI. Holy shit, so many sheep believe Elon headlines without actually reading the files themselves. Yeah, I will read it myself. I did not come to that conclusion, but I haven't finished reading everything. Imagine if the FDA didn't exist, we'd all be eating poison, and we're already eating it. It would just be much worse. Exactly. If they don't want regulation, they should see what happens with no regulation, like in third world countries. Well, you don't need to see what happens with no regulation in third world countries. All you have to do is pay attention to crypto. Look how fucking corrupt and fucking bullshit crypto is. And guess what happens? It's a complete shit show. Yeah, it's because all of the scams that are being run through crypto were scams that people ran back in the 1800s, and we made laws against it. I'm going to play some Valheim. This was a very good video. I'm very glad to hear this. American government medium is like McDonald's soda medium. Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm just saying, like, in general, I think that I think that making an argument categorically for or against government, I think is silly because it's very situational. That's what I think.